ల్యాప్టాప్ ఇక్కడే పెట్టేస్తారా? We have reached 200, madam. In another 5 minutes, we'll start the session. I'll just ask my head of the department to join the. He's available in the room. I'll make him to join the meeting, madam. Otherwise,
okay, thank you. Yeah,
we'll start the session. Okay.
Whenever you're ready.
Sure, madam. Sure, madam. Thank you for your cooperation.
Not a problem at all.
Very good evening to all. I'm Dr. Ramesh from Department of Computer Science and Engineering, Velagapudi Ramakrishna Siddhartha Engineering College, Vijayawada. Welcome you all to this one-day international workshop on entrepreneurship and innovation as a career opportunity. Today's resource person, Dr. Sandhya Balasubramanian, currently working as Assistant Dean, Academic Program Development, University of Lowell, USA. Madam has got a good year of experience, 12 plus experience on entrepreneurship orientation and entrepreneurship university incubator based ventures, student entrepreneurship and new venture team performance. So before I request Madam to start the session, a brief biodata of Madam. Madam is currently an Assistant Dean, Academic and Corporate Program Development since July 2009. She is leading an online undergraduate, graduate, corporate and international academic program development. And Madam has got 10 plus years as a Director, Innovation and Workforce Development Office at the university. And earlier, Madam as Assistant Director, Cooperative Education, Career and Coop Center. Coming to Madam's education qualification, Madam has did his PhD on entrepreneurship in the same university, and MBA also, and a master and MPhil from University of Madras. So with this great exposure on entrepreneurship and innovation development based education, Madam has got a very good experience. We are fortunate enough to have Madam on this platform to share her experience with the student community. I'm very happy to invite Madam Sandhya Balasubramaniharu to host the session. Madam, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you, Professor, Professor Panniselvam, for the invitation. I'd like to thank the Computer Science and Engineering Department at we are Siddhartha Engineering College for the opportunity. It gives me great pleasure to be able to present today to a group of very young and aspiring student group. I understand that you are all having a focus on computer science and engineering, and I'm here to share some of my thoughts. Again, these are, when I say thoughts, these are thoughts because eventually the field of entrepreneurship is going to be driven by your passion and your commitment to how you want to pursue this as a career. Let's start with some thoughts that I put together today, and if we will, I'm hoping to make it an interactive one. But due to some of the technical challenges that we've had, I have to pull back on some of the polls that I had planned for you. But there is going to be an active exercise at the end of it so that you can walk away with some valuable information about your own self. With that, I'd like to request ability to, I can share my screen. Is that right, Professor? Okay. Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. No issue.
Okay. Are you looking at my full screen or are you looking at my display settings? Can you just confirm that?
Full screen, madam. No issue.
Okay, excellent. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. So today's topic, I'm hoping to speak about both entrepreneurship and innovation. And I'm looking at it from the perspective that I might be assuming that most of you are very well versed in your own technical field of computer science and engineering, and may have some exposure to entrepreneurship. So I just want to start with some baseline, especially when you call it entrepreneurship and innovation as a career opportunity. I wanted to take a step back and before we go into greater details about entrepreneurship and innovation, we first start talking about employability, okay? And then we'll learn a little more about entrepreneurship and innovation, what influences the factors of the decision-making about pursuing a lifetime of entrepreneurship, what is the type of mindset you need, and then probably if time allows and our systems don't go down, we'll have a quick session of Q&A or a chat session. So speaking about employability, this is something that I think is when you talk about employability, your typical search process is probably like this, and most of you are probably very familiar with this. You're probably, depending on where you are in your academic career, you have probably are ready to go through the pepper mill, as we call it. All the students, you typically learn a lot about your own self. You are engaging in understanding the job market. You want to understand about the career skills that are needed. You probably have learned a lot of programming languages. And then you start narrowing down your search, and then finally you choose a career. So behind these doors, you probably have in your mind an idea of what your preferred organization is going to be. So if you have a preferred idea of who your employer is going to be, then that's great. For some of you, you probably are still thinking about it, and that's fine too. And for some of you, you probably have a long list, and I'm throwing this out. If you see one of your favorite companies in this list, then there is a lot of progress we have made. And you might be thinking, why did she choose only these kinds of companies? There are hundreds and thousands of more companies where you might be wanting to work, and you probably have a dream job waiting for you in these companies. But the selection of these companies are very unique, and I'm hoping that you probably are catching the drift of what I'm trying to say. These, when you look at the logos of these companies, again, these are all successful startups. Many of these are startups that have started in the US and probably have now gone global. Uber is a household name, Tesla is a household name, we all use Instagram. We probably use Airbnb. Amazon is something that we've all learned to live our lives on over the last 6 to 8 months. So our successful startups only started in the US, not necessarily. This is probably a list that you will all be much more familiar with rather than the list that I put up previously. And that's because these are startups that came up in India. And that's a very, very important aspect of what we are trying to discuss today, in the sense that it's critical for us to understand what is the scope of the market and the economy that we are trying to pursue, and make some entryway into as you all step into your careers. Again, looking back from before we go into entrepreneurship and innovation, I just want to step back and say, understanding that most of you are from the telecom area, among these topics, you probably have figured out what your area of specialization is. And again, these are only areas that are purely focused on the telecommunication and computing world, not to mention the application of these technologies in every sector across. So in terms of employability and opportunity for computer science and engineering graduates, there is probably no limit for your dreams and aspirations. Would that be right when I say that? I think yes. And I don't know if you can probably say, give me a thumbs up or something on the chat. That's how it goes. So when you're talking about these kinds of telecommunications and computing world, we know what company you want to look at. You probably understand where your preference and interest is. So this is something that I always think is coming from a career and co-op background. Um, what makes you employable is something that is very, very critical. And the whole concept of employability is broken down into three basic pieces. One is the applied knowledge, which you have secured by way of your applied academic skills, your critical thinking skills that your different courses have given you because they put you on a spot and ask you to start responding to certain scenarios. We're talking about maintaining effective relationships in terms of interpersonal skills and personal qualities. And these are important because no single person essentially works in a vacuum. Even if you have to go to a company of your choice, forget about entrepreneurship. If you want to be able to make any progress in this economy and in this world, your ability to interact with others is very, very critical. Likewise, that ability is highly personalized because each person has a unique set of personal qualities that makes you who you are. So those are things that effective relationships defines your personality side. Your applied knowledge is what you have probably gained through years and years of education. And then comes the workplace skills, which are essentially resource management, time management, ability to use information, your communication skills, your systems thinking, and your technology use. So if all this is what takes for you to be a successful employee in an organization, I want to add a couple of more aspects to it to say, how is this differentiated from a startup creation? Don't you need these things for creating a startup of your own? You probably need all these things. But then in addition, there are two aspects that we keep talking about in terms of startup creation. One is innovation, and the other is entrepreneurship. And if you notice the way I have placed these two as not essentially as skills, but in the circle of how the soup is mixed for you to be successful in creating a startup, you need to have innovative ideas and you need to have an entrepreneurship capability. So what is innovation and what is entrepreneurship? Aren't they the same? You might be wondering if you have not thought about it that far. So when you talk about innovation and entrepreneurship, innovation, I'm going to start with some baseline so that we are all on the same page as we discuss further, is the ability to develop something new and or improve something so that it becomes better. You are trying to achieve a goal of taking a product or a service or some kind of a process and make it benefit so that it delivers better value to the customers. your partners, or your organization. So it's essentially improving upon something, and it has different types of stakeholders to which you gear this towards. Entrepreneurship, on the other hand, is about the application of innovation. So you have this amazing idea about what you want to improve, but then entrepreneurship is taking that thought and actually putting resources, building products, and then, of course, generating revenues. So are they one and the same? Are they not? This is usually like the chicken and egg story. Okay, is do you want to start a company and create revenue, so you go in search of an idea, or do you have a unique idea or a inspiration to make something better? And is that why you're pursuing entrepreneurship? And are they two the same? If you're an innovator, should you also be an entrepreneur? Each of you might have your thoughts, but since given the limitations of our medium, I'm going to give you an analogy so that we better understand this. So I'm sure all of you most of you like cars, and especially a Ferrari. So if you look at an analogy of cars, a Ferrari, a Porsche, a Lamborghini, all these things can be treated like a car that you probably are capable of driving. And this car can be interchangeable. Now I have a picture of a Ferrari, but then I could be driving anything else. So you are talking about a car as equivalent to being an innovation. You're coming up with newer ideas, and it's a ever-changing vehicle. As we go through our lives, you probably will change many cars. But is the car good by itself? Well, if it is in the garage for too long, it's not going to be good. On the other side, I have a picture of a race car driver. Okay, is he good by himself? Well, if he doesn't have a car to drive, then he's like you and me. So what makes this whole combination very good is you need a good car that you can drive, which is your idea or innovation, and an amazing driver. It's an entrepreneur who is able to take that car and deliver an amazing result out of it in terms of achieving a good success. So now that we understand what innovation and entrepreneurship is, can this happen in vacuum? Well, it's not a science experiment where you can put it in a chemistry lab in a beaker and shake it and you will get some good results. Oftentimes we call that the enabling environment, the world around us, as something that helps us to look for opportunities. You want to improve something. What would you improve? Is there scope for something to be improved? And in this context, I want to be able to switch gears a little bit. We'll tie all these things back in a very valuable way subsequently, but I want to put it in a context of where you all are. Okay, I come from India, and I follow the progress of the country very proudly and over the years. And one of the recent reports by the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, which is a global as it such as they monitor entrepreneurship activity across the world, and they say that the Indian economic activity, the potential of this is going to be amazing. And of course, this was said before the pandemic. Okay, and not everything is lost because of the pandemic, but the people are still going to be there. There is going to be a need for growing e-commerce. If anything, they said 100 billion before. We've all lived through a pandemic. If anything, living through a pandemic has only amplified the size of the market by exponentially. Anybody who was still using a cash form of society has now migrated into an e-commerce market. The number of railway passengers, you look at the spread of what you're looking at in terms of transportation, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of consumer market. India has got a lot of potential. There's so much potential. Then why are we worried? Why are we not taking off here? That's probably a big question that all of you will have. I want to be able to step back and put it in context. You might be thinking, why is she talking so much about India? We've still not exploded in terms of our entrepreneurship activity. We're not making too many waves. for generations, we've always believed that US is the kind of the epicenter of entrepreneurship activity. About 16% of the US population are entrepreneurs, and if you look at this 86%, it actually signifies that 86% of the people who choose to be entrepreneurs are doing so because they want to do it, not because of a particular need, not because they need to put food on the table. That is not because of any pressure to do so, but purely because they want to do so. And over the years, the number has increased. And of course, this is not an election map of US, which is the topic of the day, but this is the rate of entrepreneurship across the country in the US. But if you look closely, the trend in the US is kind of flattening, and then it's also going through a downward trend because the slides, the charts below show that while the venture capital activity in the US was peaking almost through to 2013-14, it was growing increasingly. Over the last 5 years, 7 years, you can see that there is a declining trend in terms of the global venture capital investment. The share of US in the global venture market is declining, which means that somebody else is gaining. So across the globe, let's look at who's gaining. And it's very important and interesting to know that for anybody who's thinking about entrepreneurship and claiming a part of that market share, being a part of that entrepreneurial buzzing activity across the globe, India is actually catching up really very, very well. And you'd see that it has the second place in terms of claiming global venture deals. And a number of cities, it's not like it's happening only in Bangalore or it's happening only in one place. There are 6 or 7 cities in India that are attracting venture capital deals, and there is a lot of entrepreneurial activity that is kind of sprouting in these areas. And unfortunately, Hyderabad and Vijayawada are not there, but on the list yet. But we all know that it is one of the strongest areas, especially because of reports that suggest that Andhra Pradesh and Telangana are probably very good in terms of ease of business. And that is a significant factor that people consider. So soon we might see your own home state and your city on this list. So first, just to stop and recap before we switch gears, we kind of figured that innovation and entrepreneurship is a critical aspect. We understood what it is. We think that there is a significant opportunity for an innovator or an entrepreneur in India to start engaging in this kind of activity. So there are 2 checkpoints for us that's going in our favor. So now let's look at some of the operational pieces of creating a startup. What happens? What are the factors that help you create a startup? There are social, cultural, and political contexts, whether the country is having a stable political environment, are there sufficient supports provided by the government towards entrepreneurial activity. Then you start looking about efficiency enhancers. What is the banking system? How is the lending happening? How is there enough people that you can hire in the activity to be able to grow your company? And then there are some critical aspects here, which we will probably focus upon a lot, which is, again, a significant aspect of whether there is entrepreneurship activity, how startup teams can form. 2 things: societal values about entrepreneurship and individual attributes. Individual attributes, these 2 are something that I focus a lot on because they decide whether your enabling environment is actually, you are going to incorporate the enabling environment in a manner that is very, very significant to create an output in different forms. And there are 2 aspects: societal values about entrepreneurship. And in India, the stigma of entrepreneurship, it's played out very differently. One is what you see in Bollywood and your Tollywood and Collywood, and all the woods play it up very well. There are lots of movies that talk about people with entrepreneurial intent. They are struggling, and then they stumble on a great idea. And in a span of 5-7 minutes in a 3-hour movie, there is like a big song that happens, and then this person's struggles from being a startup entrepreneur to a business tycoon happens. As with most other things in entertainment, that progress between the early stage startup and the success and growth and the outcome is probably very, very amplified. It's exaggerated and kind of sensationalized so that it can inspire others. Nobody is going to like if you talk only about the struggles of an entrepreneur. You need to see the outcome. But at the same time, there are so many other scenarios where you can go and tell somebody that I'm going to become my own boss, I'm going to start up. They immediately have, if you close your eyes and think about a startup person, you probably have two visions. One is a successful role model like a Bill Gates or a Elon Musk who has made it really big. On the other side, for every single person who is successful, you also can immediately think of 2 or 3 people who are struggling to make their ends meet. So that they all are subject to the same political, economic, social context, and they're all looking for similar outcomes. But what essentially changes in the mix is, one is who's in your enabling environment, in your immediate enabling environment, and more importantly, who you are. And that's very, very important, because it is not, this box that you're seeing on the left side is not as simple, because if you look at the total early stage entrepreneurial activity, it actually breaks down the progress of a potential entrepreneur from just thinking about opportunities, having the knowledge and skills, to going through phases of conceiving the idea, the establishing the idea, the firm birth is a very, very important aspect, where you actually take your idea and make it something tangible, and you say, I'm going to pursue this. And then the most important part of a startup activity, which is persistence. If even in spite of the struggles, being able to stay the course and move forward is something that's very important. So we spoke about the process itself, and I want to take some time and help you understand what are the supply and demand factors impacting youth and youth employment and entrepreneurship. And again, these are something that is common to employment as well as entrepreneurship. What will make the difference is probably your aspirations and environment and your empowerment, the push factors that will put you in the midst of all this happening activities, and your own ability to convert your education, your entrepreneurial training, your behaviors, your skills, and who you are gaining mentorship from. This is the most important recipe for what makes a person move from where they are as a graduate going out of a college, or in any position, to be able to move towards employment or entrepreneurship. The secret sauce seems to be the same, but then how you apply this is what makes the difference. This is what we spoke about in terms of India being able to be an amazing enabling environment. They are creating a lot of public infrastructure. There is a lot of inputs, and land is available. You can set up a business. That's why we see a lot of kind of cities and towns that are growing in a lot. Finance is a key part. That's why the banking system is important. What type of regulations are being laid out by the central government and the state government are important, and what policies are there to protect the startup owners is very, very important. And all these things, in addition to your power dynamics, how much you're able to engage with people, gender equity. This is a big aspect of entrepreneurship that we are all studying these days, because if you look around, again, there is a huge gap between male entrepreneurship and female entrepreneurship, the type of sectors they play in, how much support they get from their society, from their own family, and how they are able to leverage their skills and education in a manner that makes a difference. The political and cultural context is again significant, because if there is a lot of political instability, then you're probably not going to be, when you're stepping into an uncertain world, then you want something to be certain. So this is the kind of the governing dynamics of how somebody goes from having an innovative idea to entrepreneurship. A little more in detail. Now we looked at the big background, but then now I'm trying to focus you on your own individual new venture or a startup. If you are at the center of this, your home context, what background you have, your personal experience, what type of support you have is something that makes a significant difference. What type of family commitments you have, the technology and market that you are trying to serve, the institutional support. And here, I'd like to come back to this a little later again in terms of incubator organizations and accelerators and what type of venture development organizations you can have to support. The work environment, is there going to be value to your work? And this is important because unlike employment, where if you have sat on the bench for like a couple of years after graduation, people think that you are not valuable. Unlike that, entrepreneurship has no age limit. People can come back to it at any point in time, and that's the benefit, that's the attractiveness. And that is also a downside, because if there is no time limit, and people say you can if your faculty members say you can submit your assignment at any time, we all probably will never submit an assignment. But if you say you have to submit it by tonight, then of course we all rush to meet the deadlines. Your personal background, whether you have prior experience and exposure to people who have been in entrepreneurship, is a key driver of entrepreneurship decision making. And then again, it all comes back to one significant factor, the you in entrepreneurship, okay? And that's who you are, whether you are a high achiever, you want to have independence, you want to have high control. These are very, very critical aspects of the factors that influence your entrepreneurship. And before we go into greater detail, I want to walk you through, because a lot of you are computer science and engineers. You probably are very familiar to looking at input, process, and output. Your coding is like that. You input your code, something happens in the background because your algorithms are set a particular way, and then lo and behold, you have your output. And entrepreneurship is, in many ways, has been looked at as an input, process, output activity as well. If you take out the emotion, if you take out the psychology and the psychological aspects of the person, the entrepreneur in the mix, it can be as simple as just being black and white. It's team. You want to start a company? Yes, you can start a company. But the fun is when you look at it in the next level, where you're looking at the inputs, and the inputs are, again, it is your prior experience, your social capital, your mental ability. So it all boils down to individualized notion of what you are trying to put into the mix. And there are a number of factors that that kind of mediate the relationship, what type of membership changes, who you are having in the mix, because you can have good friends who will work with you as part of your co-founding team, and that'll be great. But sometimes if you have a bad team, then things can go sour. If there are different ways in which the emergent states or how you feel about the whole process that will affect the outcome. And when you talk about outcomes, it's important to understand that outcomes need not necessarily mean only money. Outcomes can be how much of innovativeness your organization has, how much satisfaction you personally derived from this, and what is the well-being, your own well-being, and the well-being of the people that are associated with you is also a significant outcome. And outcome is important because your input is pretty much made. You're all probably in the 18 to 22-year-old age framework, which means some of your prior experience has already been, you've gone through some of that. You have acquired education. You've all chosen to be computer scientists or engineers. Your personality is beginning to shape. The good news is personality is never shaped almost until very late in your stage, and even then there is always opportunity for the personality to be fine-tuned and sharpened and polished based on your experience. And your general mental ability, the more life experiences you have, your grit, your perseverance will change. So there is some of it is the input is set, some part of your input is probably going to be evolving as you grow. Again, what your outcome is, your desired outcome is what's going to influence what type of entrepreneurship you want to adopt. Entrepreneurship, there are different types of entrepreneurship. For many people, it's technological entrepreneurship. When you say technological entrepreneurship, it's really tech heavy. You come up with this fascinating new model of how a particular problem can be solved. Okay, there is so much in the back end of it. Enterprise resource planning was one such thing. Cloud computing was one such thing. Whenever somebody breaks open a new idea or a new way of resolving a concept through technological supremacy, then you jump into technological entrepreneurship. Opportunistic entrepreneurship is looking at what is happening around you. A good example is the year 2020. Okay, while everybody thinks that being in a pandemic is really a bad situation, a lot of people have actually risen up and they said, okay, now I see an opportunity that never existed probably in the last 100 years. The last time a pandemic happened was 1918, okay? And now when you're in the midst of it, the players have changed. There is a lot more happening. In the US, when you look back about opportunistic entrepreneurship, the example that people often give is about the Great Depression in the 1940s, where almost everything was down to level zero, but then amazing new ideas came out of the Great Depression, because when you are at the lowest of your of the economy, lowest in terms of opportunities that are available, anything new can have a significant and infinitesimal impact on the society around you. So I would suggest that probably if you think that this is your opportunity to act, opportunistic entrepreneurship is a great thing. Along with that goes social entrepreneurship, is looking at what is happening around you. People are setting up so many different ways to serve the society around you. It could be for the benefit of somebody. And this is where the outcome that you desire is something that is very, very important. The environmental entrepreneurship, so much conversation about climate change is happening, and people are talking about solar energy. How do you start using information that is going to benefit the global environment at large? Sometimes entrepreneurship is through acquisition. You probably don't have an idea of your own, but you see a good business that you might have had an eye on, and so that's going up for sale. So you just say, okay, I think I know how to run this. And you just go and acquire that company and you start working on it. The other very, very common aspect is imitative entrepreneurship. And that is when you are not the industry leader, but you think that there is so much more opportunity there. And that's why take the example of Uber. Uber came, and then you have Ola, and then you have somebody else who is coming to gain market share by copying the same approach, but with minor differences in details. And then, of course, you have your cyber entrepreneurship, which is everything to do with the world that you as graduates will be engaged in. So there are different types of entrepreneurship, and based on what your outcome is, people will probably jump into one of these, and it will be what you do will be classified as one of these. And I want to stop and talk a little bit about incubative entrepreneurship. I'm guessing that as part of your education, you might have had opportunities to dabble with entrepreneurship a little bit in terms of student entrepreneurship, where you probably participated in a competition. You have an incubator on campus. Many of the universities these days have an incubator on campus to serve as a very, very safe and nurturing environment for students to try out entrepreneurship in a small way, in a place where risk is not too high. So being in an incubator will give you the support and the resources that you need for you to be able to move further in a manner that can help you ground. You will not be using too many resources of your own, but you lean on a network of resources. So let us assume that you understand a little bit about yourself, you want to start entrepreneurship, and then you figure out that what you want to do falls within one of these categories. Then you go into this huge maze of how to start an entrepreneur. All these um, steps that you see on the slide right now are essentially process steps. So you remember when we spoke about inputs, process, and output. The process is going through the motions of starting an entrepreneurship. You have a dream, then you figure out what is missing. That's your opportunity recognition stage. You write it down or you type it down, and then you start sharing that idea with many people. You make a sample, you write a simple code, and then get feedback from customers, refine it. Then before you launch it, you need a lot more money. So you start fundraising. It means you're talking about this to people who have money and who have an aspiration to invest their money in your idea. And then you launch it, and then it just goes through. Either you make it really big and you become successful, otherwise you fail and then you change, or you say, oh, I think I know what I made as a mistake, and then you go back and relaunch. So it seems simple. Okay, you seem to know what your intention is, you seem to understand what the process is. Then why are people so skeptical about entrepreneurship? That is probably the $1,000,000 question. Why should we really be worried about jumping into this field of entrepreneurship? It's essentially because startup survival rates are really pathetic. Okay, early stage startups suffer from a lot of liabilities. Okay, everything seems to go against them. If when you say types of liability, I want to stop and say, when you talk about types of liability, they're talking about all the things that can make you fail. It can be the fact that you are new, you're unaccepted, or you are a very old startup now. You are a small startup. No, you're too big to be a startup. You're in adolescence or you're aging. You have resource scarcity. You don't have money to put your ideas into action, or you've reached a stage of success that it's no longer interesting to you. Take the case of what happened with the founder of Zappos. He was so successful, but beyond that, it did not satisfy what he wanted to do. So he sold his organization to Amazon, and he's on the lookout for something else. But life took another decision for him. You are running through obsolescence. You're no longer valid in the market. You are too ethnic, or you're too foreign. So it looks like everything that you do seems to go wrong, and that's the reason why the 2-year survival rate is 80%. But when you look at the 5-year survival rate of startups, it's only 50%, which means one in two out of every two startups, only one of them will survive through the 5-year mark. But then the other bigger problem is, as this survival rate goes through the few more years, then it's going to be much more difficult, because at the end of it, less than 5% of startups are really successful in the long term. And that's something that's important. And there are so many reasons for startup failures. You all probably are familiar with many of these terms, and I'm talking about Google Glass. I hope you remember those times when Google Glass was the next big thing. Talk about Movie Pass. Okay, talk about Box, Dudwala, and Tata Nano. Each of these failed for different reasons, and the reasons were Google Glass was too early in the market. People did not even visualize. In the current day, VR and AR have taken off big time, but 7-8 years back, Google Glass was totally out of people's comprehension. Movie Pass had a great idea, but they ran out of cash because their business model was bad. Because it was a bad team. They put together a bad team. But then if you look at the Indian startup that I put in the mix, you are either outcompeted. It's a huge market. It has a lot of potential. But at the same time, if there is not enough room for you to get market share, then others are going to eat your lunch. And then Tata Nano was a great example of an Indian-made car, but there were too many issues with the pricing and the cost that it was not a viable model. Among all these things, one of the key factors that you have to think about is not having a right team. Okay, and we'll talk about this a little more as we go through. So we now understand, stepping back, before we jump to the next step, I want to take you back to what we started off with. We thought about employment and what skills are needed. We looked at entrepreneurship and we said we need to know what factors are important for entrepreneurship. The enabling environment is understood. We know the process of starting an entrepreneurship, but then the most personal aspect of being an entrepreneur and why the decision making becomes very difficult is because as much as there is a lot of glamour and glitz associated with it, there is also a high risk of failure. And all these things seem like it's somebody's story when a third person narrates it. For a person to live the life of an entrepreneur, you have to remember that this is going to be your journey, okay? And in order to be successful in this journey and to ensure that you are going through the process appropriately, you need to think about what is your inspiration, do you have the preparation, and then what is your idea to understand. And this is the same kind of a varied version of this is what I showed you as the steps to launch an entrepreneurship or a startup company. You're looking at resources. Do you have the funds to start something? What is your business plan? How would you what direction will you take? And of course, eventually, how would you launch? Among all these things, the two steps that I think are very, very critical is the inspiration and the preparation. And the preparation is something that you can probably acquire additional skills. Maybe I want to venture into a new sector. I can read about it. I can understand the market trends. I can talk to people. All those things are great. What is unique for each person and something that you need to be very, very clear about is why should you be an entrepreneur? What is your motivation to be an entrepreneur? This list, I'm hoping that when you look at this, each one of you will probably think about your own motivation. And I have a bunch of them. Just take a minute to think about this and in your own mind, because entrepreneurship is a very internal journey. I don't want to necessarily have you jump in and say, what should I do? Okay. For each of you, you will have a motivation, and that is your motivation. There is nobody can say whether it is a right or wrong decision, but it can help influence whether you make it successful or not. And for this, I'd like to be able to share a quick video of Simon Sinek, who is a very well-established author and a public speaker and a motivator. Are you able to see my my screen right now with the YouTube video?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Okay. I'm going to play it. I'm hoping you all can hear as well. Otherwise, the link to this will be on the PowerPoint presentation that I will share with your faculty member. Okay, let's start. Listen to him for a few minutes.
Say that, this if you hire people just because they can do a job, they'll work for your money. But if you hire people who believe what you believe, they work for you with blood and sweat and tears. And nowhere else is there a better example of this than with the Wright brothers. Most people don't know about Samuel Pierpont Langley. And back in the early 20th century, the pursuit of powered man flight was like the .com of the day. Everybody was trying it. And Samuel Pierpont Langley had what we assume to be the recipe for success. I mean, even now you ask people, why did your product or why did your company fail? And people always give you the same permutation of the same three things. Undercapitalized, the wrong people, bad market conditions. It's always the same three things. So let's explore that. Samuel Pierpont Langley was given $50,000 by the War Department to figure out this flying machine. Money was no problem. He held a seat at Harvard and worked at the Smithsonian and was extremely well connected. He knew all the big minds of the day. He hired the best minds money could find, and the market conditions were fantastic. The New York Times followed him around everywhere, and everyone was rooting for Langley. And how come we've never heard of Samuel Pierpont Langley? A few hundred miles away in Dayton, Ohio, Orville and Wilbur Wright. They had none. of what we consider to be the recipe for success. They had no money. They paid for their dream with the proceeds from their bicycle shop. Not a single person on the Wright brothers team had a college education, not even Orville or Wilbur. And the New York Times followed them around nowhere. The difference was Orville and Wilbur were driven by a cause, by a purpose, by a belief. They believed that if they could figure out this flying machine, it'll change the course of the world. Samuel Pierpont Langley was different. He wanted to be rich and he wanted to be famous. He was in pursuit of the result. He was in pursuit of the riches. And lo and behold, look what happened. The people who believed in the Wright brothers' dream worked with them with blood and sweat and tears. The others just worked for the paycheck. And they tell stories of how every time the Wright brothers went out, they would have to take 5 sets of parts because that's how many times they would crash before they came in for supper. And eventually on December 17th, 1903, the Wright brothers took flight. And no one was there to even experience it. We found out about it a few days later. And further proof that Langley was motivated by the wrong thing, the day the Wright brothers took flight, he quit. He could have said, that's an amazing discovery, guys, and I will improve upon your technology. But he didn't. He wasn't first. He didn't get rich. He didn't get famous. So he quit. People don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And if you talk about what you believe, you will attract those who believe what you believe. Well, why is it important to attract those who...
So this is a great example, and let's go back here. So belief is something that is, are you able to look at my screen again?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Yes, okay. Thank you. So the motivation, so if you step back again, now look at why would you want to be an entrepreneur, okay? The example that was given was about somebody who wanted to become rich and famous versus somebody who had a very unconventional idea. And some of these are reasons that will not sustain your grit and your resilience and your interest in being entrepreneurial. Instead, you will do it for, if you do it for your own self, then your ability to be successful is going to be amplified exponentially. Okay. In this context, I just want to introduce this very important measure in entrepreneurial literature, which is called entrepreneurial orientation, and kind of summarizes in very, very simple words what it takes for somebody to be engaged in entrepreneurial activity. Innovativeness, proactiveness, and risk-taking. To be innovative is, we already had a quick discussion about innovation, your willingness and capability to embrace and engage in new ideas. Proactiveness is to be able to look at something, anticipate the future needs, and then be able to respond by combining your innovation with your proactiveness. And the third and most critical aspect of being an entrepreneur is your tolerance for risk. If you do not have a tolerance for risk, entrepreneurship, as glamorous as it may sound, is going to leave you with knots in your stomach, with high anxiety and dissatisfaction that you will not be able to pursue this for too long. So think about this as you listen to the rest of the session about your own innovativeness, your own proactiveness, and your own risk-taking dimensions. And again, these are dimensions of entrepreneurial orientation, somebody's interest in being entrepreneurially oriented in order to achieve a result. But this is also something that you can will change over time. This is not like height that after 25 years you're probably not going to grow. This is most things in psychology and also in entrepreneurship is like an acquired taste. You can improve upon this, and experience is a great teacher. So one of the aspects of creating an entrepreneurial mindset is understanding your entrepreneurial orientation. On the other hand, you can go back. I'm taking you back to the circle of things in terms of we discussed a lot about employability and skills. And if you're looking at entrepreneurship as a career, there are aspects that you need in addition to your academic preparation. you need to have great critical thinking and problem solving skills. If you get frustrated by problems that keep arising in your life, probably the mindset is not there. You need to have amazing ideas, because the minute you make a pitch, something has been shared, your novel idea has been shared out in the open. Um, Anyone can take that and implement it. If they are faster than you, then they can be successful. So if you want to be a one-trick pony and you have only one idea that for your entire lifetime, then that is not probably the safest route to being an entrepreneur. Your ability to be flexible and adaptable, because you always have to have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D. Because nothing, you can only, in most cases, we can control our actions to a certain extent. And I say even that to a certain extent, but the world that we live in is so dynamic that you cannot control some of those things. We all know what happened to us in March. Okay, February, we all might have had great plans. We probably were planning our summer vacation. We were planning about what we will do in July and August, and maybe take up a summer internship at a company. So many different things. But in a moment's notice, the world around us changed. And if you get frustrated by that and don't pivot and act, then you're going to be at the losing end of things. So you need to have the flexibility and adaptability. Look into the future. In spite of all the challenges, be able to look into the future and say, I think this particular motivation is going to help us a lot. Comfort with risk, and this is common to entrepreneurial orientation as well, that how much of willingness to absorb risk is very, very critical. Opportunity recognition, similar to future orientation, similar to proactiveness, is your ability to look at something and say, I think I see an opportunity here. This is how I will take this, use my critical thinking and problem solving skills to find a solution for an existing problem. Initiative and self-reliance. This is something that is most critical thing. We all know, we've all grown up being kids, how much reliance we had on our parents to get us out of the door, to get on a school bus or put us on a if you expect that someone is going to be able to kick you out of bed every day and say, now you have to go and engage in your entrepreneurship activity, you have to think about an idea, then that is not going to be a good sustainable solution. Either you're going to get frustrated with them or they're going to get frustrated with you. So all this entrepreneurial mindset stems primarily from one thing, is that it should be your own motivation. You should have the initiative and you should have the self-reliance to walk you through. And then comes the soft skill of communication and collaboration. Again, I keep saying this, nothing can be done in vacuum. So if you sit in your own room and just have an idea and you keep refining this idea and refining this idea, it's not going to take you anywhere. You have to stop and be able to reach out to the right people in your network to vet your idea, to understand what it's going to do for you. So that said, I thought this might be interesting for us to look at some of the critical aspects of entrepreneurship. You need to have leadership skills. You need to be competitive in the market. You need to have sufficient money. So there are a number of aspects that are essential characteristics of entrepreneurship. And today I thought I'll give you all an opportunity to take a sneak peek at your own characteristics. If you have a phone and you can scan the QR code, it's going to take you to a quick survey. It's got about 10 items or so. It might ask you for your name and email address. That's purely for an anonymous, just for information gathering. I'm not going to use it anywhere. I will not be emailing you, but it is just to gather demographic information. I would appreciate if you can take the Qualtrics survey, and then I'll be able to collectively share information about each person in the next few minutes. Okay. Please give me a thumbs up or something that this will work for you. Professor, does this work for everybody?
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Okay, okay. Stop share there for some time.
ఎవరు లేరా? ఓకే. ఇంకో
120.
120.
Are you able to access it?
Please somebody respond, student. Are you able to scan the QR code? Yes, madam, they can able to do it.
Okay, very good, very good. Once they complete, there will be a response summary that you will get, which will give you your own ratings. So before you exit out of your browser, please remember to hold on to it, because we will talk in detail about your own survey in the context of what the global survey looks like. Okay, so remember to hold on to your response survey. And again, there is no right or wrong answer. This is who you are. Be true and fair to your own self as you complete this.
And a family friend dropped me home and gave me a lollipop and 4 other lollipops for my brothers and sisters. Really excited, running around the house. My sister was in the bathroom. I yelled out, "Got a lollipop for you."
Okay. Should I give them a couple of more minutes? I see responses coming in, but probably around 20 or so are only coming in at this time.
I think, madam, they might have joined in their mobile phone.
That's fine. Yeah, not a problem. Yeah. Maybe what we will do is, in the interest of time, let me share results of what we have received and others as they completed. I'll leave the response open. Can you see my Qualtrics screen? Okay.
Yes, madam. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So if for those of you who have responded and those of you who are responding, okay, again, as I said, there are no right or wrong answers. And what we did was tried and measured your own entrepreneurial characteristics in a simple activity, okay? And this is by no means a definition of who you are. It is what you chose to respond at this point in time on December 14th, okay? I'm looking at results here. There are a lot of people who are mostly say that sometimes I'm a leader, but I'm also willing to follow others. So that's a good trait to have. In terms of competition, okay, 43% of them say I thrive on competition with others. Okay, so very competitive group you have here. And some of them feel like they are competitive about their own chance when their chances of winning is high. Okay, so they are careful in terms of evaluating their environment, and then they jump into action probably based on how well prepared they feel they are. Okay, in terms of money, this is a very cautious group here we have. I will spend it only on things that will help me reach my goal. So they seem to have very clear thinking on that respect. So they're not frivolous, they're not spending their money. That's a good character trait in many ways, okay? In terms of mistakes, okay, people are very reflective, and that's a very important aspect of who you are, is to be able to learn from your mistakes. What about the ideas? Most people think that when they have ideas, they will talk to their family and friends about it. Good. More minds are better always. People are friendly, but I like that other people initiate contact. And this is a very consistent finding, in the sense that even in the US, we feel that there is a lot of connection between who you are and the choices of majors that you choose. Somebody who is very outgoing and extroverted often ends up in majors where there is a lot of communication requirement. Whereas if you're looking at sciences and engineering, people are very strong in terms of their academic achievement, but not necessarily great in terms of their communication abilities. So this is a reflection of who you are. And it is by no means a good or a bad thing, in the sense that If it's good for you to be friendly and you know that this is who you are, sometimes you might have to step outside your comfort zone to make an outreach in order for your benefit. In terms of work, there is a split, there is a 45-48 split in terms of people who want to work 12 to 16 hours to get a jump start on their career, but at the same time, typical of this generation of Gen Zs, they like to make their own hours and choose when they want to work. And that's again indicative of the fact that it is well beyond 6 o'clock in Indian time and you're all logged in here. So there is a lot of flexibility that the pandemic has afforded us rather than the typical 9 to 5 schedule that we follow. Physical stamina, good healthy group, which means that you can work more. Okay. In terms of problem solving, okay, people, the highest is they like to face the problem and they want to work and solve it, which is amazing. And finally, in terms of planning, again, we see that people are have a good idea about what they want to do. They seem to pursue it. In all these things, the cumulative understanding is what we need to look at. Okay, if you look at the responses that have come through, people are all across the board. People who have 10 and people who have up to, all the way up to 38. The highest you could have got is a 40, and in your own responses, you will see that there is a rating that was provided to you, and I left it on there for you to see that every one of those responses was actually scored on a scale of 4, 3, 2, and 1. The first response being a 4. So as you go down towards the bottom, that is who you are, and it's good for you to understand your own propensity to be engaged in entrepreneurship. And this is the mix of everybody. And with most things in entrepreneurship, we do break it down by gender. And I'm very thrilled to see that there is a higher propensity among the females in this group attending today to be having a higher entrepreneurship score. That's wonderful. We need a lot more women to break the entrepreneurship barrier and make a name for themselves. So I would encourage those of you who have not taken the survey or who are still processing it to take the time to actually complete this, and the results will keep trickling, and I'll keep the survey open for a couple more days because I know today is kind of a weird situation where we had a blackout. So I just refreshed the score. Women still seem to be doing very well. Now let's look at the interpretation of this. Okay, that is more important. If you scored somewhere between 32 and 40, you're born to be an entrepreneur. Okay, and this is just me. This is no scientific test or proof of anybody, but this result is based on a number of other people who have responded in their own career pursuits. It means that you have strong interpersonal skills. You're comfortable taking the lead. Your money and planning habits are amazing. You can handle long hours of work, and you don't mind talking about yourself and talking about your ideas. And this is critical. We saw this come through in the survey that you thrive on competition. So that's amazing. This you have this in you. So when there is another opportunity or you have a great idea and you are in this range, then take it a little more seriously. If you score between 23 and 31, you can be an entrepreneur, but under the right circumstances. Okay. You'll need your enabling environment decides whether you move forward or not. And we saw this in terms of the interpersonal skills that people said, I am very friendly, but I'd like for somebody else to initiate first contact. That's because you probably are shy and much more reserved in your approach. But as you acquire more confidence in your own skills and abilities, you'll probably become much more forthcoming, and your interpersonal skills will gain from that. And people who are spontaneous right now with money will probably become much more strategic. If you scored less than 23, there is no pass or fail, as I said about this survey. It's interesting because only 12% of the Indian population are entrepreneurs. Okay. When you say you're an entrepreneur, you are the person who comes up with this idea to start a company. The good news is they can never operate in vacuum. They need smart minds like yours to make them successful. So you may not be a startup founder, but you could be a co-founder. You could be part of the founding team to help the startup become successful. And as startups grow, they become huge organizations. Think of Amazon. There can be only one Jeff Bezos, but is he the one that is running the company every day? Not at all. In everyday life, you bring your entrepreneurial mindset, the same leadership skills, the same ability to be proactive and look at opportunities. Wherever you are in an organization, you can bring that spirit to your organization. And the good news is there is no magic 8-ball which says that whatever you scored today is what your score is going to be forever. Keep revising, and you're shaped and fine-tuned by your experiences and your education and your life experiences. Someday you will probably learn something that will put you on a different category of who you are. So for the people who scored less than 23, I want to say, look at the skills that are needed for small business management. Okay, and if you look at it, a lot of it is, these are skills that are found in terms of job postings, in terms of what jobs require skill sets in terms of small business management. And you will see that it doesn't really say cloud computing or Internet of Things or programming capabilities. These are all skills that are required for you to be able to contribute successfully in the business. You need to be able to manage your budgets. You need to know how to plan strategically. And on this bottom side, you would see that these are all what we call soft skills. Okay, your ability to communicate, your leadership skills, your problem solving skills. These are skills that you can bring as a contributor to any small business that you work in. And you might be part of an organization for many years before you jump into entrepreneurship. So think about it, hold on to this thought, and that will probably help you shape your career. Now, comparing the two things as we begin to wrap up our discussion today, okay, we first spoke about what are the skills needed for employment, and then overlaid with a number of mindset activities, entrepreneurial mindset, and the thinking that kind of needs to be superimposed on your employability skills in order for you to adopt entrepreneurship and innovation as something that you want to pursue. And again, I will stop short of saying that entrepreneurship is a career, because entrepreneurship is a calling. It is not a job. Okay, it is something that you feel the need to follow, and it gives you a sense of direction and purpose. But of course, there is no guarantee of paycheck, and that is what makes it interesting. Okay. And before we close, I'd like to take us all to watch a couple of minutes of inspirational thought from Steve Blank. Okay. Okay, if you can see my screen, you're good to go.
Yes, madam. Yes, sure.
Okay, good.
A startup, especially as a founder, is a calling. And if you're not called to that, if you can't get that out of your head, if you're not passionately engaged, waking up at 3 in the morning making notes, if it's not the first thing you're thinking about in the shower, and convincing your family that this is the thing that you need to dedicate your life to, don't even think about doing it. Because the odds of success in a startup are infinitesimally low. This has to be passion-driven, not career-driven or salary-driven. And so that's the first thing I remind their students who either want to be part of a founding team or an early employee. This is not a job. Entrepreneurs are closer to artists than any other career. We make the mistake in teaching entrepreneurship and thinking that it's akin to a business school curriculum or an engineering curriculum. Entrepreneurship, it just happens to sit in those schools. But truly the curriculum that it's closest to is art school. Because while we teach, art appreciation, we teach art theory, art is really experiential, and it's passion-driven. It's not that you're going to do one code or two. I mean, you're going to be looking at a blank canvas, and the next day, there's going to be Star Night, if we're lucky.
Okay. I hope you found this very, very useful and thought-provoking. And again, I hope I've inspired you to think a little more about yourself, because commitment to entrepreneurship is something that is very, very important, and for you to be able to navigate through the rest of your life. It's not something for the faint of heart, but at the same time, it's if you are passionate about it, nothing is difficult to achieve. Okay. I would be glad to take some questions about, if you have any, you can put it in the chat window. I would probably turn over the reins back to your professor for us to be able to talk some more in a manner that he thinks is best suited.
Okay, thank you, madam. Thank you. Participants, if you got any question, please type it in the chat window, or you can unmute yourself and speak it. And also, I would like to give the valuable feedback which
Yes.
we can share with madam.
Was this useful for them to think about it? A thumbs up, or maybe you were expecting something else?
Somebody said, good evening. You got any question, Yamini?
I have not received any yet, but I think they are slowly beginning to.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes, you can. If you got a question, you can.
Yes, sir. Good evening, ma'am.
Yes.
First of all, I want to thank you so much, because it was very informative and very much inspirational as students of a teenage, and we are aspiring to become entrepreneurs. So I have a question like, so the base thing for anything is an idea for a startup. So what kind of ideas will help us to build a successful startup?
So again, each person will come up with so many ideas. So just think about the last video that we saw with Steve Blank saying, whenever you're not working on a problem, okay, for school or something like that, are you naturally drawn towards some kind of an issue that you want to solve? Okay, we leave home, we go to work, we go to school. Okay, people see different things within the same field of view. Okay, I might walk out of my house and I can look at trees being cut, and I might say, oh my god, how many trees are being cut? And that's the beginning of social entrepreneurship or environmental entrepreneurship. Sometimes you are frustrated with the product that you have, and that is mostly the case where people try to break status quo, disruptive innovation. You look at the regimes of how things are set up. Let's take the example of Uber. Okay, for years we used to have these black and yellow taxis and autos, which you only had to go to a stand to pick up. Whoever thought of being able to call a cab just like that from wherever you are, and be able to pay? Okay, breaking from the norm. And so how you get your idea is something that is decided by what bothers you, and that is the pursuit of an entrepreneur, is to find something that you are so passionate enough that you are willing to dedicate a lot of time to resolve that problem. So oftentimes we all complain saying, this is not good, that is not good. We all complain about Zoom saying, well, I don't like this platform. You are all smart computer scientists. Is there a solution that you can create? Is there a enhancement of the feature that you can create? So just start thinking about things that bother you and what solutions you might be able to offer.
Yes, madam. Really, the problems are the what happens around us is what the problem exactly we need to choose.
Yeah,
And
I see.
we do have got lot of social issues.
And that is a social issue, is probably the easier one, because I can talk about computer science, but I don't know computer science. So you might be looking at problem. Cloud computing was a solution to the huge giant servers that each of the companies needed to have in their own backyard, and have that as a real estate. So you break free from the shackles of whatever you are tied down by. Look at what is spinning you down, and how would you resolve it. So the first and foremost step to take after getting a good idea would be to talk about it to people who are good mentors. Okay, first you get your inspiration, you take your idea, and then in slide number, I can show that again to you. Let me share my screen again. Chaitanya had a question, right?
Yes, madam.
Okay, so if you look at what is the step after getting an idea, okay, you have identified that you have a thought. Get that idea and start refining it. Talk to people whom you trust and people who you think might have some knowledge in that area to evaluate that idea. Okay, it is like in some ways, if you assume that you found your best dress that you think it's a good color, don't you turn around and ask your family and friends saying, hey, does this color look good on me? Okay, it's very similar to that. And you say, take your idea and you say, how do I build this idea into something tangible so that it can be helpful for me to take the next step? How do, in some cases, based on where the idea is, you might want to talk to a mentor. People go to an incubator so that you can have the support and the resources and the connections that you need to be able to make your idea into a reality. Sometimes your idea is so well formed that you just jump into action and you are able to launch something very, very quickly. So from an idea to reality is the most crucial step. So take that, start building it out so that it becomes a tangible thing, and then vet your idea with so many people, and then you will be able to start beginning to refine it, find a co-founder, find your organization form that you want to make your idea take a tangible form, and then funding, and then you launch it. Chaitanya, I hope that resolves your question. And it's not easy to take an idea. It is easy on paper, and that is where your entrepreneurial mindset comes in, because these are tried and tested strategies. And as we know, with most innovations and entrepreneurship, it is a field where every norm is often broken by the next new entrepreneur or the innovator coming through.
Dr. Aditi has got a question for you.
Sure, yes. What makes for a student to be confident to move towards an entrepreneurship side? First is once they have an idea, they need to solidly believe in that. And because especially in the light of Steve Blank's comments saying, this is not a job, so you don't dabble with it on the side. This is not like a hobby. This is going to be your mainstream life. So in order to build confidence, the first thing that we need to understand is that you have a good idea that will take you into the future. You have the skill sets and the support systems to ensure that you have the ability to grow and scale this. Okay, entrepreneurship is a long and hard journey for some. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it is often portrayed as a very simple thing. We probably don't see a lot of what is happening below the water. If you look at it, the successful entrepreneurship is only a tip of the iceberg. Okay, there are lots of things that need to be achieved and have to be in synchronized modern methods before people can take on entrepreneurship. So the family support is important. Their finances are important. Their resilience is important, because all these things are never to be taken for granted. And that is why for somebody to jump into entrepreneurship, the enabling environment is important. You need to believe in yourself. You need to have the right team, and you need to have the conviction to take a good idea from being an idea into reality.
Any more questions, students? I think it's
Thank you.
madam. Any other question? Sir has said thank you, madam. Once
Okay.
again, it is another question from Chaitanya.
What if no one trusts the idea? Then there can be two problems with that. One is you're talking to the wrong people who don't understand the value of your idea. Okay. The second is stop and think whether there is something wrong with the idea. Okay. There are two ways to do that. Is if you take your idea further. Okay. Oftentimes, before I was in the Career and Co-op Center, and in my current role, I used to be in a medical device incubator where I was the first point of contact when physicians came up with these amazing ideas, and they would come and present their thought process. And as an incubator, we would evaluate their process, give them feedback, and then say we can either support it or not. Okay. And oftentimes, the people who evaluate your idea come from a very, very traditional school of thought. Okay. And entrepreneurship and ideas in entrepreneurship, by definition, are paradigm breaking. So sometimes there is always a disconnect between where you see potential and where others are probably stuck in their traditional mindset. There might be a mismatch, and that's why you feel like they are not trusting. Okay. If you believe that you have an idea and your foresight has taught you that this will work, take it to the next person. Keep pushing your idea till you find that person who's willing to trust you, and you make the call of when to draw the line. Okay. The thing is, in terms of entrepreneurship success and failure, oftentimes they say that for early stage startups, within the first 3 months, you might know whether you have something to take it to the next level or not. If you're not getting good traction, you don't get a sparkle in somebody else's eye. That means continue to work on refining the idea. Maybe you are focusing your solution on the wrong market. Okay. There is another question which says we should look for VC or just start with what we have. I think it is probably both. Again, when you look at the process for startup, they say get an idea and then go for venture funding. It doesn't happen like that always. This is an idealistic version of a process version of how startups work. Maybe someday, if I have an idea and I hit the lottery, I might just start with the VC funding first, and I know somebody is willing to give me money. I can go with looking for an idea after I know I have money. So there is no right or wrong process, but oftentimes an established VC will be willing to invest in you after you have gone through these stages of you have clarified your idea. They're looking for validity in the sense that the market is willing to accept it. Okay, and that's why when you don't have resources to support yourself, that is why there are incubators and accelerators which provide you the venture development support without actually having to need as much resources that a VC can afford to you. Okay, and they will also give you contacts to VCs. So that's why incubators and accelerators are like are a very nourishing and nurturing environment, because you start working with a lot more like-minded people where you start looking at how somebody else has an idea that has been sold. That's why you look at a lot of role models to see why did a particular product make it. The more you study about all those things, you will be able to draw inferences about your own startup. There are many, many incubators and accelerators in India. There is a long list, especially university-based incubators are becoming very popular. One of the most successful ones that I have visited and I've collected data from is the T-Hub in Hyderabad. Okay, that is a great incubator. A part of my research studies, I actually I studied a lot of startups in very early stage. And my data collection was actually in a number of incubators here in the US. And because for all the reasons that I cited before, saying the share of US in the venture capital scene is declining. So I focused my studies on incubators based startups in India. Hyderabad has some great, T-Hub is a great incubator. IIT Madras has a good incubator, and you will
Yes,
find
madam.
incubators that are thematic also. I think the IIT Madras one is much more focused on I think there is a healthcare focus. There are incubators which have a technology focus. So a simple Google search, maybe today is not the day for a Google search because the servers are down, but tomorrow morning you can probably get started and start looking for incubators in your areas. There is a lot of information available. Does your university have an incubator on site? Do you have a student incubator?
Means not in a well-established way, madam. We got some specific industry people are there in the department,
Okay.
but they are all just giving the students some vetting process and
Okay.
mentoring them. They are not
Okay.
taking
Okay.
it to the next level.
Okay.
That's what even the principals or management, they are very much happy in financing the ideas, but we are all not in a proper chained way to get an
Okay.
entrepreneur. At the end of the day, it's 1, 2. That is what the count we are getting.
Yes, yeah, it is a difficult area to kind of break in. There should be a lot of commitment from the industry. You should have good networks, and so there might be opportunities for you to start connecting with startup founders in your own town, and they probably like to give advice, and that is the beginning of setting up incubators and accelerators. But
Yes, madam.
connect with others outside so you don't have to replicate the same thing, especially because physical space has become irrelevant these days. So you can probably set up sessions where your students can connect with incubators outside of even Vijayawada or anywhere. Okay, even in the
Sure,
US,
madam.
get guidance and advice.
Sure, madam. Sure. That is what we are also expecting from you, madam. As even
Certainly,
head
yes.
of the department said, why can't you ask madam to be a advisor to our incubation hub, which we are at very early stage, madam.
Okay, okay, certainly. We do have a center, and I'll be happy to talk to our department chair to see how we can set up a partnership for providing guidance. We do have a student entrepreneurship institute here where we provide. It's called Difference Makers, and
Sure, madam.
we can certainly have some kind of collaboration to give you the
Sure.
guidance and
Sure,
support.
madam. Sure, madam. That is what even HOD sir said to me that Ramesh, we need to speak to madam in a private meeting to discuss about our future plan of action in the department, madam.
Certainly, we'll be glad to help, and I can connect you with people who are actively involved in that as well,
Sure,
so
madam.
that you have more support rather than just one person. Okay,
Yes,
it should
madam.
be an institutional partnership.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam. Somebody else asked for a contact. I think you can get it in the web Chaitanya. You can just Google. You will get madam's details. If you got any query, also you can, with madam's permission, you can mail her.
Yes, if I don't promise, but I can certainly, if there are questions, I'm glad to look at it. Okay, I'll be happy to support, and Chaitanya
Even
can.
you can suggest some career advancement since here the students are at the bachelor level, madam. They are studying their BTech graduation. So what kind of educational support in future can make them to a better entrepreneurship? Means towards entrepreneur.
That is kind of what we call here as a $1 million question, because the school of thought is very split between whether entrepreneurship skills are acquired by education or whether they are acquired by experience. Okay, some of the skills that we like, communication skills, soft skills that you can always acquire. You can get that through management education. You can get that through entrepreneurship education. You can get that through workshops purely by interacting with people. So if you are very keen on pursuing entrepreneurship education, but you also want the support, start looking at universities for where they do have a strong project-based learning method for entrepreneurship. There are some universities even in India where they support that. Where you will have an opportunity to engage with other entrepreneurs and start creating your own ideas. That will kind of give you an opportunity to test and fail in a secure space before you jump off on your own. And there are many such programs in the US as well. In our own university, we do have a difference maker entrepreneurship program, which is something that any student can pursue, no matter what your background. You could be a computer science student, you engage with a couple of business students or an engineer or based on or a healthcare major to figure out a problem and a solution that you can solve. So there are different paths to taking on entrepreneurship, but the most important thing is the mindset. Preparing your mindset is probably the most important piece.
Yes, madam. Yes. So if there is no other question from the audience, I think it's really an excellent presentation, madam, giving a very insight into the entrepreneurship for these young minds. That is what we should be very happy to share here, madam. The people at the end of the day, they have joined us. Even if Google would have supported, since I have got around 550 registration, madam, only half of them have made the meeting.
That's okay. Today is a unique day where Google came down, so it's all right.
Yes,
you have recordings, so you can feel free to share the recordings with the students. And I'm glad to have been able to share some of my thoughts.
Yes,
and again, these are just pointers for you. You're all young and vibrant, and your mind and your ideas will take us into the next generation, in the next century. So we are relying on you to make the right decision. Okay.
Okay, madam. Thank you so much, madam.
Very much. I'll stop sharing now, and thank all of you. Have a good evening and good luck with your future.
Thank you, madam. Thank you for your excellent talk today, madam. On behalf of the college management, principal sir, and my head of the department, once again, I thank you for spending your valuable time here and madam. And we are also looking forward in the future to have a collaboration with you and your institute, madam. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. We are having very strong activities and collaboration with a number of universities in India. And once in the new year, we'll probably start talking a little more details, and then we can set up some kind of a partnership.
Sure, madam. Sure, madam. Thank you so much.
Forward to that. Wish you all a very happy new year. Stay safe and stay healthy.
Okay, madam. Same to you, madam. Thank you.
Bye now.